David Ojabo had really done almost nothing at all up until this season, to the point where when he started to break out this year, I think a lot of people within the Michigan program were holding out hope that he would return to school, go back, build up his stock into a top 5 pick because his game is far from complete, be a yet another superstar Michigan pass rusher. And they've had some really good ones over recent time, whether it's Rashawn Gary, whether it's Kwity Paye, Aiden Hutchinson, who was at the Heisman ceremony this year. But Ojabo opted to declare for the NFL, which probably tells you he got a really good grade from the advisory board. I think he's round 1 destined, despite the fact that this is a Michigan team that you could tell when watching their film, they were afraid to have him on the field in very run-heavy situations. He needs to put on more strength and mass in his lower half of his body. I've gotten to talk to some people that have gotten to scout Ojabo in person, and they'll say it's the first thing you see. And I think that is something that will come with him over time on an NFL weight training program, the right coaching. And the reason he is in this discussion to be drafted so high, Trevor, is that he just has great pass rush traits as a speed rusher, right? And it's really all stand-up right now. He's not going to put his hand in the dirt at this moment. He's going to stand up. He's going to try to beat you really with a ghost move, right, where you can't even get hands on him. He'll throw a spin move in there. He has shown, the ability consistently to try to win that outside corner and swipe at the ball when the quarterback is sitting in the pocket. So for Ojabo, if you're a team that feels like you have the brawn, the power, and the strength, and you're looking for somebody that can take the tackle wide, really run that arc, maybe even turn into the corner a little bit while he develops the rest of his game, he's going to be the guy for you. I think it's a little rich to take him, in that top 8 conversation, but maybe in the second half of the first round. I love the Bills as a fit personally. Ojabo has a lot of exciting ceiling potential in his game.
Yeah, no sacks going into this season. 11.
Not a lot of snaps
coming after this season, right? And they're just wearing a lot of snaps. And when you look at that and kind of, I like the way that you kind of brought up his scouting profile there. And what you emphasized was this is a guy who has all the tools in the world, if you will. He's just very raw. And that makes a lot of sense when you learn more about his background. He's born in Nigeria, moved to Scotland, lived in Scotland when he was growing up. And he didn't actually start playing football until he was a sophomore, junior in high school when his family moved over to the United States. And so this guy just doesn't have a lot of snaps, period. Like not just like a defensive end or not just as a starter or like at a big level, like period. He just hasn't played football that long. And so when you take that into account, how he's just a junior at Michigan, really started playing football 2-3 years in high school. I mean, this guy's barely got 5-6 years of football under his belt. And if what we saw this past year is going to be an indication of what his ceiling could be, I think that's why you see a lot of people put him in the top 15 of first rounds, just because the NFL is probably going to take a good chance on him, because this draft class as a whole, it's not as good as last year's class. I'm just going to be honest with you. And even at the very top, you look at guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, we're going to talk about those guys in a little bit, but like even those guys maybe weren't guaranteed top 10 picks if you put them in last year's draft. Well, David Ojabo is kind of one of those next guys that you would have after that first tier group. And I agree with you that it's the snap to snap, I'll say disciplinary things with Ojabo that are holding him back right now. You mentioned the run fits, just the early down work, right? Not getting exposed, not getting blown off the ball, putting more weight in his lower half, being able to anchor, being able to control the point of the attack in the line of scrimmage. That's how you get on the field as a full-time first round worthy edge player, is if you can be a 3-down guy. And right now, like if you plop Ojabo into the NFL right now, he'll give you the pass rush upside on 3rd and long situations, which is the money maker anyways. That's why you take a chance on him. But it would be that early down work where you're kind of like, all right, well, can we put this guy on the field right away? And if you can't, is that a first round pick? Well, that depends what draft class he's in. So you get to have all these conversations with David Ojabo. But, as the year went on, he talked about how he watched a lot of pass rushers from Michigan while he was kind of growing up there as a freshman and a sophomore, watched Josh Uche, watched Kwity Paye, watched these guys who are older than him, more refined pass rushers, and tried to take little things from them. And as we saw this past year as a junior, was able to put it all to work and have a lot of really good success with it. Going into the season, or maybe not just going into the season. I guess I'll say even right now, there's a lot of people who cite lack of production and high traits. And when you think of that, you think of a guy like Odafe who came from the NFL draft last year, who it's like, okay, this guy's got all the tools you could want. He's strong. He's fast. He's got powerful hands. He's got some good pass rush moves. He's creating pressure, but there's not a ton of production to his whole career. Now, Ojabo had a better single year than Odafe ever had at Penn State. So that kind of goes in the mix. It's not a one-on-one comparison. I get the reservations on Ojabo. Ojabo isn't 5 for me. And I guess I just kind of spilled out my explanation of what I think of Ojabo. He's actually number 4 for me. So I guess I'll just say that. He's right there. I think we see him kind of similarly. But number 5, I have Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher from Florida State. Now, I've said this on this very podcast. I thought Jermaine Johnson was kind of like a fringe first round player, would have been more comfortable with him in the second round. And then the Senior Bowl came around and he absolutely put on a show. And you go back and you watch the tape and you see the things that he did well at the Senior Bowl, which was be able to attack the outside shoulder, be able to be used as a pass rusher, dominate one-on-one situations. And you go back to the tape and you go, okay, maybe there's not as much of that as you would have liked to see, but in the instances where he has the chance to really pin his ear back, he does show that he has that capability. So if you put that role in front of him more in the NFL, it makes me think that he's just going to continue to have more and more success. So those are 2 guys that as we talk about tiers and buckets of this edge rush class, I see them very similarly, right? When you look at David Ojabo, this guy is 6'5", 250 pounds, kind of the same thing with Jermaine Johnson, similar build, 6'5", 255 pounds. These are similar guys who I don't want to say have the exact kind of same skill set, because I have a lot more faith in Jermaine Johnson to be a thumper, to be a early down edge rusher than I do David Ojabo. But when we're talking like tiers, I'm kind of putting these guys in the same bucket. It's basically like, what do you want or what do you need more of an edge rusher? These are guys that I think are going to be first round picks when it's all said and done. But that's who I have 5 and 4. I didn't really know how to have that conversation without just kind of like talking about both of them there. So Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, I have him at number 5. And David Ojabo, the edge rusher from Michigan, I have him at number 4.
Yeah, and then that's it for me. Jermaine Johnson's number 4. So we just had them flipped at 4 and 5 and have very similar thoughts on them. And, you know, when you look at it, when you look at Jermaine Johnson, it comes down to that he has had more times, more snaps to develop overall. You know, Ojabo is someone who will turn 22 in May. And I know Jermaine Johnson, I believe, is at least 22 right now. You know, JUCO product to Georgia to Florida State. So they are very different players in that sense. I think Jermaine Johnson has a little bit more of his mass in his lower half, and I think that's why you see him hold the point of attack and play with more power. He definitely has a better idea how to use his hands, while Ojabo is still figuring it out, but there's flash potential there where Ojabo can do things that most edge rush prospects, they lack that kind of speed and explosiveness. So that's the... You know, it's like when you're looking, you're looking around for like a great thing and you're like, okay, Ojabo could be that great thing. He's just not there yet, but everything tells me that it's all there. Just needs to be unpacked, unboxed, and put together. And I think that there's a lot of risk in that. I'll be very fair here. I think for as excited as I am about David Ojabo, there are guys like this that more often than not do not figure it out because it's really hard to beat NFL tackles. You know, there's somebody like... one that I missed on, and this is going way, way back, but look at Danielle Hunter. I think he had 4.5 sacks in 26 games his last 2 years of college. And that is like laughable production for somebody that turned into one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He was someone that it was all there. The length was exceptional, the body type, the explosiveness, and he was able to put it all together at the next level after not being a first-round pick, after being a day 2 pick, but there's just not many Danielle Hunters. So Ojabo, I like that you gave the background because that gives you hope that he figures it out. And when you look at Jermaine Johnson, it's been a little bit of the opposite. He's had that long road where he did figure it out in college. He goes down to the Senior Bowl. He's unblockable. Like I said, he plays with more power. He can win the corner. He can counter inside. So I think if you're looking to put somebody on the field for a good amount of this rookie season and get instant production, a little bit, know more what you're getting, that'll be Jermaine Johnson. If you're looking for, a 3-year window and trying to get an elite pass rusher, somebody will go up there taking the home run swing for Ojabo.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the NFL does with this edge rush class, because there are a couple of other guys, like David Ojabo is one example. I think Trayvon Walker from Georgia is another example. Drake Jackson, I would say, is another. And these are guys that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the podcast. But like, these are players that have really high ceilings that either you haven't seen yet or are more projections than normally you might be comfortable with first round picks. And those guys still might end up going really high just because of the overall class of 2022. Like, some NFL teams might look at this overall class and say, hey, this isn't my favorite class. This isn't the best class. It's not super deep and talented at the very top. Let's just take a chance on guys who are going to hit the home run. And I'm just very curious to see how teams evaluate this class. And I think who goes first, or how far the gap is between where David Ojabo gets drafted and where Jermaine Johnson gets drafted, is kind of going to tell you a lot. And it might kind of tell you how the rest of the draft is going to flow, because these are two guys that, like you said, kind of have those backgrounds. Is there a player comp for any of these guys? Not to like put you on the spot, because I have one for one of them. So if you ever have a player comp, like just feel free to throw them out. Do you have a player comp for any of them?
No, for these guys, I don't have comps yet. I will say for edge rushers, very much so, because the way they change their body so much for the NFL, I lean on the combine heavily to come up with player comps. But I mean, I'm curious to hear what you got here. So I'm excited. I love a good player comp.
This is one that I thought of right when I was initially watching Jermaine Johnson. So my thoughts a little bit different than when I wrote this one down. But I wrote for Jermaine Johnson the Jacksonville Jaguars version of Jeremy Mincey. So Jeremy Mincey was like 6'4", 255, 260 pounds. He was this like bigger edge rusher, but you watch some of the best of Jeremy Mincey when he was in Jacksonville. He was this bigger, stronger, 5-tech, 4-3 defensive end kind of a guy who would sometimes out of nowhere just give you this burst and give you these pass rush reps that were kind of crazy. And I went back and I looked at his mock draftable profile, and I think Jermaine Johnson's going to test a little bit better than Jeremy Mincey was, but I'm not like fully sticking on that comp. I just wanted to throw that out there. I know people love when you give kind of like comparisons of these guys. And so that one was one that came to me when I was thinking of Jermaine Johnson, and it's a little bit different since the Senior Bowl, but I wanted to throw that one out there because I know the good people love anytime you can give a comparison.
I love me a throwback comp. Like, I live for the throwback comp, to the point where, like, if I'm like just, fiending for one, I'll go down a YouTube rabbit hole of like NFL players from 20 years ago and be like, I need one right now. So I love to see that. And yeah, Ojabo is going to be the comps for him are going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't have a good one for him.
Me either. And it kind of goes down to like, how much will he change his body for the combine? What are I find it interesting with pass rush player comps, because, and this could go for any position, but especially pass rushers, you can do the route of like, what am I projecting him as in his fullest form? Or what am I seeing now going into the NFL? Because pass rushers change so drastically. Like, there just aren't a lot of guys that are like the Bosas or Myles Garrett or Chase Young that when they come into the NFL, it's like, yeah, that's probably what they're going to be, and that's enough to be an all-pro player. A lot of times guys really do change their game. They work with better coaches on how to use their hands. They throw in some extra moves. So I think Ojabo is going to be one of the hardest players to comp in this class, because some people will project him as a comp and some people will say, what is he now? And those are two very different things.